do Invoice Genie, which essentially is a invoice automator, which scans everything, and you basically save a lot of time. So basically 2 years ago, I did a summer job and I worked as an accountant. And I think one of the worst memories I had is having these massive piles of invoices. I had to manually process. I would look at them. I would have to put them in some crappy website. And it was just very tedious, right? So my solution and what I tried to fix was reduce human risk, right? Because if you're doing this for 2 hours, you're bound to make some mistakes. And obviously automate, save time, and then accountants, which are qualified for more important things, can actually spend time doing things that are meaningful. So basically, I'm happy to say we succeeded in that. And I'm going to basically show you pretty much how we did it. So this is basically just a long list of all the steps we took. So you get a PDF, you get an image, turn it to an image, then you put it into a model that then detects the areas that are interesting, and then you extract information from that, and then you get a nice Excel. So how does it work? So we used a model called YOLO, which is a deep neural network model, which basically you have an image, and it can basically, the way it works is you annotate it. That's what we did with Luigi manually for the first couple of days, which was very boring. You label it, you say, okay, this section is a table, this section is a paragraph, as you can see. So we had to manually do this thing. And eventually, when you use enough data set, it kind of learns to recognize what works as a paragraph, what's a table. And so you don't have to actually manually, every time you have a new invoice, annotate it, it just does it by itself. So yeah, you can see annotation. So what it works. So once we have the paragraph, once it's identified it, then we crop out these images, just like we did here. So that's an example. Paragraph 2, we get an address. And then we use OCR, which is called, well, it stands for object character recognition, which means that essentially it's going to look at a picture. It's trained on a bunch of different fonts. And so it basically realizes that that's a C, that's an O. So it is easy for us to recognize that, but as an object, as a computer, it's not obvious. So we have to go through this step, and then we eventually get a list, as you can see here, of a bunch of different texts. But obviously, as you can see, it's still unstructured. It doesn't necessarily form one coherent sentence. So then we have to go to a third step, which is passing it through an LLM. So essentially, you have all this unstructured data, and passing it through an LLM using, for example, what we used, the OpenAI API, it structures everything into a coherent full address, as you can see now. And so then you can actually use it as an accountant. So that's the first model we used. Second model is called Donut, which is essentially pre-trained model trained on invoices, which kind of, I guess, serves as a safety net where if the first model, because LLMs are not really reliable to this day, it also provides good, the right information so that we can kind of have two sources of information and filter out and see which one works. So that's just an example of one of the few stuff that you can extract. Yeah. So essentially, yeah, we create those two. We'll show you on our website, and we can then generate some Excel. So for one invoice in this case, you get roughly this information, the name, the address, the invoice number, and total amount you have to pay. So now I'm going to pass on to Luigi, who's going to show you a bit how our website works.
Thank you, Victor. My name is Luigi. I'm happy to give you a little introduction to this interface that we have created with Streamlit. And as you can see, it's a fairly user-friendly interface. And we want to make it nice and easy for accountants to upload their invoices. So essentially, the user would go onto this interface, look into their folder where they have all their invoices that, as Victor said, they would manually have to look through them, put them into an Excel. And of course, if you do 100 invoices, the risk that you're going to miss some key information is definitely there. And so, for example, here we are, one invoice that is as you will see, is fairly complex. So now it's processing the invoice, is using the YOLO model that we fine-tuned specifically for invoices So for fine tuning, meaning that, as Victor was saying before, the model has been trained on a lot of images, but not necessarily invoices. It seems relatively trivial to us humans, but for models to understand what a paragraph is, what a table is, can be fairly complex. And so we had to manually go through a process of actually so-called fine-tuning, but means that we humans train the model, tell the model what is a table and what is a paragraph. So once we go through this fine-tuning process, then the model is able to understand what is a table and what is a paragraph, and can actually recognize fairly accurately for the amount of data that we had available. As you can see, paragraph 2, 3, and it can catch most of the things. And once these so-called regions of interest are extracted from the invoice, again, we use OCR, which for demonstration purposes we put here. As you can see, that is fairly readable, but it's very unstructured. So it would be hard to put this into an Excel and into a neat Excel when you have loads of invoices. So that's what we did. The unstructured data goes through the LLM, which makes it much more readable, much nicer, and you can pass it through the Excel in a much more structured way. And since we understand that when it comes to money, you want to be careful with the zeros. We have this safety net. Well, with donuts, where the downside is that it doesn't catch everything, but it catches a few things that really matter, like the invoice number, the gross amount, and essentially, so we make sure that for the key piece of information, we have a double check system in place. And once this is done, the happy accountant can just download the file as an Excel. And as you can see, everything is neat in a table, and basically we save them a lot of time and hopefully make them a little bit happier. Thank you.